I call the Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. For 2 days now, the Prime Minister has travelled around from Federation lectures to the Parliament, pontificating about how we should all think for the long term. This Prime Minister, the most narrow, negative politician in Australian history, is now trying to lecture Australians about planning for the future. Who does this person think he is, that a leopard can change their spots after 20 years of relentless negativity? When their unfair budget is failing desperately, he now seeks to run up an emergency beacon and says, hang on, we want to have a sensible, mature discussion about the generations ahead. Well, Tony Abbott, here's our advice about your sensible discussion. Demonstrate your bona fides in higher education. Nothing can be more important to the future of this country than higher education and the opportunities that our young have to better themselves and contribute to this nation. He has the temerity, this Prime Minister. He has the cheek. He almost could convince me that he's so out of touch, except I just don't believe him. He knows that his plan for Australia is to radically recast it and to create two Australias. He has a chance to demonstrate it. Don't shake your head over there, sunshine. You know I'm right. He should come out of his. He needs to come out of his hiding. We all know that the Prime Minister of Australia is in witness protection.
The Leader of the Opposition is always keen to have people referred to by their proper titles and will in fact observe that.
Okay, thanks. The Prime Minister needs to come out of his hiding place. We know he never goes out and mixes with real people anymore. He does safe picture opportunities in medical research facilities, or he talks to Liberal Party faithful at fundraisers. Oh, that's right, he did go to the Peter McCallum after the fundraiser. But the real test here today, is that education is one challenge that the parliament should not fail. No parliament and no government and no Tasmanian backbenchers should ever look back and say we failed the test of making the education system better than worse. I do not know how a single Tasmanian Liberal can be backing these higher education changes. Opportunity in education is a pact between generations. The member for Bass is interjecting. He's not in his seat, Madam Speaker. The Tasmanian Liberals need to stand up along with the Labor Party and understand that the solemn responsibility of every government is to pass on an education system better than the one they inherited. Now, the government's abdicated this responsibility, he's failed this test. Labor believes that if you work hard, you get good marks. If you can do well, you deserve to go to university. Destiny should not be predetermined by your parents' wealth or the postcode in which you live. We should be opening doors to children from the bush, to children from poor families, to first-generation migrants. We should be helping mature-age Australians dislocated by economic change to get new skills and retrain for jobs of the future. We should be supporting the opportunity of women to get access to higher education. Labor believes in a university system that gives every Australian the chance to fulfil their potential, to strive and seek and reach for higher ground. That's the fair system that we built from the great Gough Whitlam onwards. It is the system that is under attack from the backward-looking government, from this Prime Minister of negativity and narrowness to the patrician pretender, the Education Minister. Look at the schemes that they want to introduce, the changes that they're creating. A nursing degree in Victoria. That's a state, by the way, members of the government, we do not expect to see the Prime Minister visit before the state election. We hope he does, we just don't expect to see it. Mind you, we don't expect to see it, and Premier Dennis Napthine doesn't want to see him. But a nursing degree in Victoria, under these people's rules, the government's rules, is now $23,000 over 8 years. Under the Abbott and the Prime Minister and Education Minister model, it'll be $63,000 over 17 years. What a marvellous contribution to education this Education Minister is. $40,000 more and 9 years longer to pay off. Talk about a teaching degree in Victoria, $31,000 over 9 years. Under the government, under the Minister for Education, the so-called Minister for Education, and the Prime Minister, it'll cost $81,000 over 14 years. Courtesy of the government, $50,000 more and 5 years longer to pay off. Calm down, Member for Bass. I know you're upset at how I pinged you before. Now, the other problem here that we have about education is the unfairness for women who take time off to start and raise a family. They know these costs are impossible for mature-age students. The students of Australia, their families, they know this government is fundamentally changing access to universities. They understand Australians. They understand exactly what this government's doing. For months and months, this Education Minister has been asking the divisive, dog-whistling question: why should the 60% of taxpayers who don't attend university contribute to the 40% who do? Why should those who don't go to university, haven't been to university, contribute for the fees of those who do? Well, Minister for Education, the answer is simple. Not all Australians are like you. They don't believe that education is just a private privilege. They believe it's a public benefit. Australian university graduates also pay for their education, not just through HECS, but through their economic and social contribution. They pay to their countries and they pay to their communities. Now we see the changes that the government are making are indeed creating anxiety. The numbers at open days and the numbers of potential enrolments are down. Why should the doctors and nurses who keep us healthy, the teachers who educate our children, the architects and engineers and city planners who shape our communities and our infrastructure, why should the scientists who are making discoveries that will determine our future health and opportunity, why should they all be slugged with doubling and tripling of their university degrees? Australians are smart enough and they're generous enough to reject the Liberal ideology. They understand the greater access to higher education is in fact an advantage to all of us. I have never met a parent, I have never met a grandparent who didn't go to university who begrudged the chance for their child or their grandchild to go to university. Never met a parent or a grandparent who complains about the taxes they pay because their loved ones are getting a better start in life than what they had. But anyway, we're in this debate now, and higher education is absolutely one of the issues for the next election. Absolutely it is. The next election will be a referendum on the best ideas and the real vision for a prosperous and fair Australia. Absolutely. Nothing is more important to the future prosperity of our nation than education. We believe in affordable, accessible education, which is accessible to all Australians. That is why we will fight to stop Tony Abbott's plan for $100,000 degrees and more. We will never support a two-tier, Americanised higher education system which divides between different levels in our society and entrenches disadvantage. This Minister for Education loves to talk about 80,000 scholarships, but he never talks about the 700,000 domestic students currently enrolled. What he's proposing to do is provide 80,000 scholarships, but the remaining difference between 80,000 and 700,000, well, they're going to pay more fees. This is not the bargain. This is a tricky, slippery Minister for Education who loves to talk about, just look at one aspect of his package, but never tells the full picture. Never tells the full picture. We look at then what is happening with what they want to do in higher education. We've seen the Minister for Education propose doubling the rate of HECS repayments. Imagine in Australia if what we did is if on home interest rates we said before an election no problems, and after an election upon forming a government we were to double the rate of payment. That is what this government and this Education Minister and Tony have done. They are changing the interest rates of HECS payments for nearly 1 million Australians. They love to talk about debt and deficit, this government. What they never do is talk about the debt and deficit they're putting onto ordinary Australians and the families of ordinary Australians. Labor will never consign, we will never consign Australians to generations of debt and higher education. We will never tell Australians, you're not in your chair, mate, move. Labor will never tell Australians that the quality of their education depends upon their capacity to pay. I love hearing the government members crow in disagreement, in feigned outrage, because they know what we know, what the Australians know. This government cannot be trusted on higher education, and the louder they complain about what we say doesn't change the truth of what we are saying. Make no mistake, higher education, the game is on. We will talk to every student. We will talk to every family member of every student. We will talk to the parents of secondary students. We will talk to everyone who goes through and is interested in higher education. There will be a choice at the next election. There will be a choice between this government issuing students a debt sentence, by deregulating universities to the point where students simply can't afford to go to university. Shame, government, shame.
Members' time has expired.